then if it wasn't for Jordan Davis, he would have really stole a combine, but Jordan Davis was 40, 50 pounds heavier.
Right. Interesting group this year is the interior defensive line group. We knew this was a group throughout the course of the fall that needed some guys to step up to the plate to kind of fill what we perceived to be a group that was weaker at the top. Everybody always obviously knew about the two defensive tackles from Georgia, but even Devontae Wyatt was a guy who was not really on the radar the way that he is right now when this season started. So I'd love to hear from each one of you guys who that one player is this year that you thought really stepped up throughout the course of this process to kind of get us to a point where we feel like we really have fleshed out and have a couple of options in each of the first couple rounds in this year's draft.
I'll start. I think that the words that I like to use associated with this position is influence and impact, right? Because there are times when a player's impact, who's an IDL, it won't always show up within the sheet, right? Within the stat sheet. But the one player who I think that really has done well for himself is Devontae Wyatt. I think he's more of a single gap guy, but someone who was extremely impactful, extremely influential in what they asked him to do in Georgia. I think the 4-3 teams are going to love this player, either playing the shade or the 3. Someone who I think who has a tremendous amount of upside. There will certainly be the questions about how he was impacted playing next to Jordan. But if you look at the quickness, if you look at the his pass rush ability, it really brought a lot of impact and influence for him as a player.
You know, I'll go with the other Georgia defensive lineman. That's obviously Jordan Davis, the more popular one. Because coming into the year, Jordan Davis is more looked at as a second round, even third round pick, right? He wasn't always talked about as a first round pick, potential top 15 pick. But then you watch him play this year, and you watch the rate he was able to win against the run, and even what he showed as a pass rusher, having that kind of initial quickness, having the bull rush potential, and just being an overall dominant player, down in and down out. He's now firmly in that first-round position, and that's something that we couldn't say going into the summer.
I go Travis Jones out of Uconn, and I think he's a player that has continued to ascend throughout the process. I mean, he played at Uconn, right? I mean, not a football program that's done well for themselves in recent years, and he commanded a lot of attention as a nose tackle in an odd front defense, and I love that he was still able to make plays, whether it was against the run and the pass, and he goes to the Senior Bowl and does a phenomenal job. Was one of the biggest winners of the week. He had a really outstanding Senior Bowl. The coaches rave about his leadership, and so he's a guy that gives you size, power, athleticism on the interior that I think him continuing to ascend and really having a good season and a great draft season, I think he's been a big part of shaping this defensive line class that needed to be shaped.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with Perion Winfrey because I think he has really good pass rush upside. And we seen in the Super Bowl, Aaron Donald, and I'm not saying this guy is Aaron Donald, right? You only get one of those every 20 years, but just the impact that an interior defensive line pressure can cause on a quarterback. And obviously we know the NFL is a copycat league, right? So everybody, their eyes were on, on the Super Bowl game and watched the impact that Aaron Donald had. So I think other teams are going to try to get that also. So they're going to be looking for that athletic interior defensive lineman that has pass rush moves to be able to get that quick pressure on the quarterback, because Joe, you always talk about this, right? And you throw out the stat of how quick quarterbacks are getting rid of the football, and I think you need that interior pressure because that's the quickest way to the quarterback, and you get pressure in his face. So Perion Winfrey is a guy for me to have your eyes on because I think he can go higher than I think everybody having in the back in the draft, maybe last 3-4 picks, but if you're looking for a pressure guy, he can go in that 20 to 25 type range right there.
What makes Perion really interesting to me is, and that was the name who came the most to mind for me as well,
yeah.
Keith, was Perion, but this guy with 35-inch arms. And he's played on the nose, but he was playing out of position.
Right.
And you think about what that exposure to playing on the nose has at least exposed him to from experience in dealing with combination blocks, potentially being somebody who is charged with, at times, just controlling the line of scrimmage, not being a penetration player. And then you foil what he showcased in the All-Star circuit and at the NFL Combine from an explosiveness perspective to verify what we thought, and that this is a very explosive athlete. And you have exposures to him now, and you have boxes checked that indicate that with further development, maybe this is a guy who plays end in a three-man front. Maybe he's somebody who plays a three technique. Maybe he's somebody who can move up and down your line of scrimmage in its entirety and be able to try to find mismatches on a week-to-week basis depending on the down and distance situation. And I think that, for me, is what gives me a great deal of confidence in Perion Winfrey being somebody who has helped fill that void for teams who are hungry for interior defensive line play.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a really solid class, right? Like when you mix in what Joe said with Travis Jones, it's not just Jordan Davis. I think for majority of the year, the notion was kind of just Jordan Davis. Who else will emerge? And even Dre talked about Devontae Wyatt, and it was because we thought that this guy was undersized, right? And then if it wasn't for Jordan Davis, he would have really stole a combine, but Jordan Davis was 40, 50 pounds heavier. Right. I mean, that's tough, right? But, man, I'm excited about this interior defensive line class because I think it's very verse. I think we have a lot of guys that's very scheme versatile also.
So let's tap a little deeper into the class. Who are some of the guys that you guys have studied throughout the course of our cross-checks, our regional work, in season, in the summertime, who have now popped for you as somebody who's more of a mid-round type of player who you think can step in and fill a pretty prominent role for somebody quickly?
A guy by the name of Haskell Garrett, right? I think we talked about him the other day, man. I thought a guy who's projected to go probably 4th, 5th round, but a guy that I think that can be a sub-rusher on the interior, someone who can be a three technique. I think he has his holes, but I think that if you play him in a specialized role, I think you can maximize the type of player he can be.
I have a name. It's Thomas Booker from Stanford. He's a guy, if you watch him in 2020, they lined him up in a variety of roles. You saw him at defensive end, you saw him at the 1 tech, you saw him playing even 5 tech, and you saw him playing 3 tech. So it's hard to really get a feel of what he does best. And then this past year, they finally started using him more as a 3 tech and letting him get over the top of guards. And he has a good quick step. He's long and he's powerful to where he flashes some upside and potential as an interior disruptor and pass rusher. And so you take all that in, and then you see him in the Shrine Bowl, and he was really one of the best players all throughout the week. He's a guy I really get really excited about when you start talking about guys, maybe in that 4th, 5th round range who can come in and contribute day one.
I'll go with Matthew Butler out of Tennessee, another Shrine Game guy, and thought he had a good career at Tennessee, just kind of overshadowed with that program and kind of their struggles of late, but a guy that I think gives you some rush upside in the interior, and I love that about him. I want guys that can rush the passer and play the run, and I think Matthew Butler gives you a balanced skill set as a mid-round guy that I think can come in and impact your rotation, give you some athleticism, and he's a hand technician with some explosiveness. So there's a lot to like him as a mid-round guy.
I'm going to go with Arkansas defensive lineman.
Good pick.
Our guy, Kyle Krebs.
That's right.
John Ridgway. This may be the most ferocious run defender of everybody in this draft. You want teach tape on how to lock, peek, and shed. This guy does it, and it's time and time again. And we think about the Arkansas schedule, they played everybody. They played Alabama, they played Georgia, they played Texas A&M. So this is a guy that played the best competition that's out there. Kyle, he consistently took on double teams. And when you talk about really locking people out, he would damn near snap them in half, right? Like he had that extra strength to his hands to where it wasn't just a lockout, but now I'm going to push you back and really stress you. And it was just impressive to watch on film. I'm like, man, this is really what coaches talk about, and this guy consistently does that. So I think he's versatile as far as whether he can play in a 4-3 or a 3-4, and he may even play that 4-out position and just really just dominate on the interior defensive line. So this is a guy that's really flown under the radar, but if a guy that gets drafted to a good defense, I think you'll consistently hear his name because he'll always make those plays that allow those linebackers to run free and really make plays.
You know what name comes to mind when I think about John Ridgway, and you'll appreciate this? It's Harrison Phillips.
Yeah,
as far as what Harrison Phillips has become for the Buffalo Bills before departing this offseason, and it's like it's not a sexy role, right?
Not.
But if
somebody got to do it,
right? That's right. But if you're expecting him to be a guy that gets 8 sacks for you, I got bad news for you. Like you're barking up the wrong tree. But watching him snap off and literally fold offensive lineman in half when he goes to discard the block, right, and uncover when the back is pressed up into the line of scrimmage. It's really, really fun to watch, and you got to have the certain kind of sickness to enjoy watching interior defensive linemen fold guards in half. But that's why everybody here at this table gets along so well. So John Ridgway is definitely a great call. This is a really interesting interior defensive line group, and it's good to see some names that have stepped up to the plate and kind of fill the void this year.